So next on the agenda is the ecosystems, and this is Daniel Einstein.
So thank you, everybody. I think you're talking about a lake restoration project that we're just starting now, Lower Beach. So we're not anywhere close to far along. This goal is very, very beginning. As a matter of fact, we just had our first partnership meeting to discuss restoration yesterday. In this world. Okay, so our project partners here is Fox Island Tribe, there's Conservation District, there's counties on water, Capital Land Trust, South Beach, South San Diego, water resources, salt networks, Department of Fish and Wildlife, and Natural Management, and U.S. Board of Environmental. And so far, our funding has been through from the Department of Ecology, the Symposium water program, and from Conservation Commission, their riparian grant program, and then through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, which is a big funder of this meeting we're presenting today. And that's been funding from NOAA for coastal facilities specifically, and then private funds. So our project goals can be summarized in one: resilience. Across this 600, and I forgot to point out where we are. You can see the current project area there. It's a 600-acre project area, and includes about 3 river miles of Deschutes the shoreline. Then you can see a future project area there. That is future conservation that we're doing. So this project area, across this project area, past agricultural use has disconnected the floodplain and significantly modified the interior wetlands that I'll show you. And the result has been several moving factors, the high winter and low summer base lows, fine sediment transport, lack of deposition, lack of wood, and high water temperatures, lack of habitat complexity, lack of wood specifically, and moving it into channel areas. So all of this has impacted several species that are endangered in salmon populations. And so our project will to address these moving factors. So reduce flood risk. We want to increase some base flow by increasing groundwater storage and aggregate exchange, improving water quality generally, reducing pond sediments, bank erosion, reducing temperatures, and increasing dissolved oxygen. And our goals is wildlife habitat generally. And the idea that really connects all of these things is floodplain. Okay, so here you see the extent of the project area when goes for served by the lands. The left bank of the river is really characterized by high intensity development, residential development, terraces, development, floodplain, and then industrial developments. South part of the south part of the project area. And this is really seeing the left bank, and of course, you can see really a lot of floodplain modification. And in the right bank, in contrast, is in much better shape. Short forest buffer, improved places, but it's in better shape. And then in the interior, that polygon, the yellow polygon, which is the property that we conserve, is Alliance Creek, and the property contains the entire critical limit forest, the confluence, and but it's got some new characteristics. It's fed by spring, So there's a lot of continued there, especially for overwintering urine habitat, in beach that's pretty lacking in that habitat type. But it's, the whole area was managed very from years. They, creek was channelized, pitched, to drain the wetlands faster, and is now dominated by the fast and largely within so another way to look at this project area is why it's pretty interesting to look at it this way. So we might identify these two, from that's point of view, we identify these two sort of sub projects. One project number one, which is floodplain protection and restoration to hold flood risk. That's the resilience goal, and then sub-project number two, which is the flood risk administration storage. And but what LiDAR reveals is that this is really just one system. It's one interconnected, very low-rate system that presents us with a really unique opportunity to address some of those limiting factors that we talked about. So, to summarize, you've got two pretty sized channels, the river, creek, and that's helping with gas floodway manipulation, mitigation, ability, side channels, and most of all the movement from the river. All this is high stream power that has further eroded the banks and then further inside the channel. Over that field now is a reach where the water table is low, the stream power is pretty high, and the floodplain is over disconnected, and it's for resiliency system. So the questions for us are, how do we create restorations that are going to consider floodplain function, value, storage, or put it another way, how do we create a kind of dynamic floodplain system that also creates those resilience benefits that you want to see? And more specifically, how do we connect these two once we integrated systems? How do we reintegrate them between the section of the project? So this site is very large, 600 acres, and there's diversity of conditions. But I just want to offer a place of four of them that are high characteristic. And I'm going to play into some things that we're going to talk about when we start talking about restoration alternatives. And the top two are river and the bottom two are what we call the inland element basin. And so, on the top, let's see, to your left, right, you see these high banks, steep eroded banks, super incised channel. This is a characteristic of the sort of top and bottom sections of the project. But then on the other side, see this sort of middle, more unconfined beach and project area for the floodplain that for the water level is more closely meets the floodplain with this ample potential for floodplain reconnection to pretty straightforward food basin. And then down below, you see we have about 150 acres or so of wetlands along Water Creek. Again, that's stitched here. But it's dominated by root and aircrafts. There's total lack of vegetation. And you can see on this side of here, you can see the division of the creek here pretty clearly. And that that ditch is below and it really acts like a drain system. Now beavers have reversed this situation a little bit, but because there's no woody vegetation, there's no contributor. Or so wood for annual. So they not run out of seed. But at the other, in other parts of the property, there are these nearly intact areas, but there is a lot. So we have a lot of beaver on the property. We just kind of need to take it in hand. So, like most streams, the police service say here was the faulty channel. So that's true both for the river and these really wetlands. This corresponds to what's known as stage zero in the stream evolution model. And you can see that sort of at the top of this triangle here, stage zero, and this corresponds to low stream power. It corresponds to high biological interactions and kind of a balanced erosion resistance. So both often how erosion is part of the natural process. It is, but when you get into the extremes where the river is right now, the river is right in this region right here. You have really high stream power, as I'm going to show you. You've got low biotic interaction and low erosion resistance. So the question for us is, how do we move it to that better place? And to move the river back towards the previous state, we shift the focus, so we propose to shift the focus to the floodplain and to the biology that involves in a healthy channel that's interconnected. And this, some of the practices around what are being referred to now as like stage zero practices aren't dependent on engineering structures, and they correspond to creating systems which corresponds to maximum connectivity, flexibility, habitat, and you know, in general improves fire resilience, but also flood resilience. So to see this sort of best way to visualize this is to cross section and see three different panels. You have existing condition, as-built condition, 5 to 10 years post construction, and what you can see is, you know, you have the sea-size channel, and what we're going to do is we're going to raise up the channel bed there, and then we're going to grade down the floodplain, which allows flows to spread out, slow down, and increasing the wetted areas that allows gravels to fall out and store creatives, diversity, habitats, and spreading those valves across the floodplain, which is going to improve that header exchange, recharge from groundwater, improve your drought resilience, and also water quality. So you another benefit is you get this hyperdiversity, these different small channels that are activated at different ranges of flow events, and you know, they're creating conditions to improve like bearing path. The water table comes way up, and with the movement of the inside channel, and you get increased type of rate exchange, groundwater flow, and that's going to improve your drought resilience, improve the conditions for repairing vegetation and water quality. And then it's going to improve resilience. It creates this dynamic system that's resilient to the entire range of watershed processes. So it's sort of filling in, raising up the channel bed is an idea that is sort of relatively new, and so I you know, thought of sort of worth to bring it up. And this image sort of illustrates the benefits that coming of you said this isn't the Deschutes River, but you can see that this image is divided between a restored region and unrestored region. And that unrestored region actually looks a lot like our Deschutes River in this section. We've got a single threaded channel, it's disconnected from this floodplain, it's very dry, and then our goal is to like these restored beach, create this multi-threaded beach slash webs. Okay, so where are we in this process? We started to collect some data to understand hydrology project here. We established baseline. We installed lots of different probes, monitoring wells, and so forth. And all of these probes may be in June. So we're just at the very beginning, but we're getting to see some results in our monitoring wells. And we're going to continue to see a collection over at least 18 months. So I don't want to go into this in a whole lot of detail. I don't have a whole lot of data to show you. But I did want to sort of underline the DNA sampling that we did in the Long Green at 6 different sites. You know that we didn't detect presence of local salmon, locally outgrowth. So this is a habitat, even though it's degraded, is being used as urban habitat by. We also collected some drone based data for LiDAR in the forward-looking infrared. And that's basically giving us an indication of local temperatures. In the blue areas, is sort of warmer temperatures. And with regard to Elmira Creek, this is really indicating areas which should focus on right-hand plantings to help address the shade deficit. And then multispectral imaging on the other side, see we processed it for invasive species. And again, the two big patches are green canary grass for the pink, it's green canary grass, and then the light green is dominating green canary grass. This just allows us to sort of map out and quantify the properties that we have. So we also needed to construct a numerical model to predict stream velocities and flood depths to help us identify problem areas and investigate consequences of restoration actions that we're contemplating. LiDAR gives us the basic geometry, but LiDAR doesn't penetrate water, so it's really not giving us any indication of depth of the channel. So we got out there and carried out loads of inventory surveys, 600 points collected on the river in the Ecology Creek. And then with that, let's just go here. Okay, with that data, you see panels on the bottom terrain without the bathymetric surfaces, and then between with the bathymetric. So you can see that the channels are deep in here where we inform their local depths about the bathymetric surface that are carried out, and know the degree of ditching which really pops out of the middle, and we add in that application. So, as an example of a basically not time to go into all of it, but this is an model prediction in this area of a 100-year flood. And then you see that our average area is compared to Dino's 100 to elevations. 16, so it's pretty good. We have some confidence in the model. So this is a 10-duration simulation, which just means that only 10% of the days in this community see these flows. So this is a wet, but non-flood, say November, December day. And a couple of things to note here. First of all, we're getting in the middle sort of unconfined reach there of the river. We're getting some there's some cyclones and hospitals that are being engaged, but the vast majority of the floodplain really isn't engaged at all, right? The river confines that channel. And the flow's really fast, okay? It's in a second. And see we're having some map versus rewards for more species so so this is really not a healthy river. Floodplain is completely disconnected. Even very relatively high flows and velocities. our body. Remember that that's problematic, it responds to speed powers, responds to low erosion resistance, also or by algae reactions. They would fume flow that we show for some models in where they get out. Okay, so just a little past the precipitation flow, you've got a 1/4 flood, and we begin to see a little bit more floodplain activation, and similarly at the 2-year flood, then you see even more floodplain activation. But notice these two areas, this reach here, and then the sort of ear-shaped curve at the top. These are defined regions. Even at the 2-year flood, we do not engage in the floodplain at all. And even though to some extent that 2-year flood is a kind of floodplain activation that we actually see on sort of 50% duration. So the other side of the picture here is velocities. This is that same 2-year flood. You can see in these problematic areas that flows are very, 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 very high. Right? Very high. We have middle of confined region. Still not a lot of wood in the system. Velocities are a little bit slower. You need a whole lot more to engage the speed channels there. But it could be that just the placement of wood in this middle confined range is going to be enough to move the flow. But here and up there, we're going to need to do something. So as I said before, we're sort of at the very, very, very beginnings of this. So this is a map that shows some alternatives and restoration actions that we're being now. And I'll just sort of walk you through them. And I guess that's what we can do, guys, just get up in the slide here. And this is, we're calling this alternative 1. Maybe it should be better called alternative 0. This is just some initial concepts that we thought about. And like I said, we literally had this meeting yesterday, so it's totally embedded. This is the dream here. And for the moment, we're ignoring landowner. Okay, we're just asking ourselves what's good for the river, and we're not getting, there's a long way to go. And we're talking about permitting these things. Are we going to get landowner buy-ins? But you can see in these problem areas, what we're proposing to do is put a lot of wood in here on the top of this decline region. And then we're talking about raising up this whole region, talking about raising up the bed of the river. And perhaps you can see that maybe 5 feet. And simultaneously grading the floodplain down. And what this is going to do is this is going to better engage this part of the, and we're going to start to see flows this way, which historically were. So the large flood here is going to engage for 9 years of creating diversity of aquatic habitats, raising the bed, lowering the elevated floodplain, can enhance this hydraulic activity, water storage, and increase diversity of habitat types. Same thing at the very top. I can't use all the way up there, but we're really thinking about placing large woods sort of at the very top of that problematic reach, and then grading down and elevating up where you've got really deeply sized banks. In between and then I think by reach, it's mostly helicopter for everything. Just placing a lot of wood to engage some of those side channels that are nascent. And then the vegetation sort of everywhere. Now here in the elevator basin, you can see there's this relic channel here, which indicates that historically there was flow here before the river was totally size. So that decision was all about Solve to move the past the thing. So here, you know, maybe raising a bed of that ditch channel, yeah, putting some elevated banks in there that would get you know, make sort of take some material from this is the hate that happens, you know, glass and pancakes out of that direction. So you can have some contours and topography there and create some topography around the pond. Because that pond right now is, you know, it's 6 inches deep in the summertime. So it's very, very high. And that's problematic in terms of water quality. But then in that sort of bottom reach, doing things like just reducing wood and putting DDAs fewer than analogs. And then just adding as much willow and cottonwood, dogwood as you possibly can there. And give the people materials for it and let them do their thing. And in that, this is a really, Hellfire Creek is a really kind of unique opportunity because we have no constraints at all. Like we don't know the whole thing, right? And so we can, you know, we can play around with the levels for water there as much as we want, the deer can go crazy. And nobody's very be. Okay, so those are just the sort of very initial concepts that we're thinking about on you know, this project, which clearly we're at the very beginning here. And you know, the way to continue this process of the project or any questions.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. No, I won't live to see it when it's in its best conditions, but I am concerned about riparian zone plantings. It takes a while to gather enough plants to do the work here. Do you have a source?
Yes, the site itself is source. So we planted about 40,000 in the United States so far. And you know, when we have to stagger harvesting, most of those have been harvested on site. There's a little bit of cost, but as we build up you know, those bullet heads, as becomes. But yeah, I mean, you're right. The bigger problem for us is source structure, and that's just a problem everywhere. But there are a couple of projects going on in the area that, for example, the Fish and Wildlife is not naturally operates basic mode, which is sort of a top project. You're gonna have to cut down lotteries. So you know, that's not a source of large inputs. But yeah, I mean, one, we need a lot. There's capacity for 1 million trees. You know, it's most of it is open and unvegetated. It's going to take a long time. Yes, the bike packs.
Yeah. Remember, remember, why the whole property?
No, well, so there has been some worse practices on the site. So it was, there, you know, close to the river, the trees are very large, and you know, they're like you know, they're second. They're not original, they're second. But there is about 80 acres that's kind of for plantation. It was ours that we planted 35, 40 years ago. And we're still being taught classes of using thinking for development. So we're doing some thinking for forest out there.
That can be, we'll give you another cut on that in figures.
No, no.
Good job.
Yeah, no, like, we'll do something, but super forest help, and we'll just drop trees and be left, or, or pop some trees to be some grass, or things like that, we didn't sort of talk about that, it was just to get, some of these trees are thinking. I'm thinking spacing, that's not, it's not, it's not good, big trees, yeah, it's not.
All right, Daniel Einstein, Ecology.